Wallace came home one day telling his mother and father that he was going to go to a movie with a girl that he liked, and she'd agreed to go to the movie with him. When his mother and father asked him if he was prepared to pay her way in and buy her something afterwards for a snack, Wallace was quite surprised. They told him that's the convention when you ask a girl to go out to a movie. Wallace was quite crestfallen. He immediately went over to the girl's house and cancelled the date. The story I've heard from 2 or 3 different relatives was that Wallace's mother, Lottie, was a foundling baby. That the family that would have been Wallace's grandfather, paternal, and grandmother, had this baby left on their doorstep, wicker basket, a note saying essentially, please take care of my baby. Old grandfather snorted and said, well, we can always use another girl. And she was taken in, and eventually Oliver married her. She was a very vigorous house chatelaine, and it was always a pleasure to go to their house and eat the dinner that Aunt Lottie made. She was always nice to me. All of the people I knew, she was nice to. I hear the story that she spread malicious gossip about another branch of the family that was probably untrue and caused a lot of hurt feelings. But she was always good to me and to Graham, and I always enjoyed going to their house. End of story.
I remember that my mother detested her because of the rumors that she apparently started. My father would make our mother go into Lottie and Oliver's house, and Mother would sit on the couch with her gloves on her umbrella handle, wearing her hat and her veil. She would not take them off. But Father insisted she had to do this before he would drive her out to her family farm. Some years later, my mother explained to me that there was a first cousin of ours who had serious family problems at home and left the home and came to Toronto. She worked as a domestic where she had to be taught how to make fancy meals, and this was at the time that I was born. And she would visit my mother in the hospital. Then after my mother brought me home on her day off, she would come and visit at our house and help Mum wash me and dress me and feed me. And I think I became her favorite cousin. The rumors that were apparent was that this cousin was illegitimately pregnant and had gone to Toronto to have a baby. At the time she was visiting my mother, she should have been about 7 or 8 months pregnant. My mother said she was never pregnant during any of that time, and this was all somebody's malicious gossip, which damaged that family severely. End of story. these medicine-selling people would bring a dog or a horse or whatever around that did tricks, or a punch-drunk ex-fighter. And if you could stay in the ring with him for 3 minutes, you could get 50 cents. And the sucker that would get into the ring would be our father, Jack Nickle.
Apparently he did it fairly regularly. And when his sister, Aunt Maggie, would try to tell us the stories about that, he'd try to hush her up. Mm-hmm. Didn't want it known that he was a bit of an adventurer when he was younger.
Well, Father sold his ladders, step ladders and extension ladders, to different hardware stores in Toronto. He also ended up selling a bunch to Eaton's. Eaton's just put them in a warehouse, and then eventually Eaton's put an advertisement in the paper advertising his ladders for less money than they had paid for them, which now meant that his regular customers wouldn't buy from him anymore. And then Eaton's had figured out how much it cost him to make a ladder from materials, and that's what they told him they would pay in future. So essentially they bankrupted him, and he was finished in the ladder business.
Okay, and then he got into wax paper.
Gas station first with the Impervious Oil Company, and he had many run-ins with the inspector from the Imperial Oil Company. And at one of the Association of Gasoline Retailers in Toronto, there was some discussion going on as to the type of person who was the inspector for the Imperial Oil, and rumor had it that John Nickle was supposed to have made the statement that this inspector was really the illegitimate son of the vice president of the Imperial Oil, and it spread throughout the meeting. And when they said John Nickle said it, everyone assumed it had to be the truth. And the inspector and the Imperial Oil was on the lookout for to nail him.
Did they eventually?
He got out and got into the wax paper business, which he then carried on till he was physically finished.
Yeah. You helped out in the wax paper business, both of you did, didn't you?
Yeah, and he, being your father, was smart enough to get out, and he wanted to be an artist. I hung in and eventually ended up having other jobs that I worked at, but then would make enough wax paper at night for Father could do his retail accounts, but he carried on as long as he could.
So the story is that two Nickle brothers immigrated from Ireland, and when they got to Montreal, they had to go through customs. One of the brothers was noticeably slow. These things show up. And he was the one who was required to write their names. And this informant from Ottawa told me that he spelled Nickle wrong. And that's why the Nickle people spell it N-I-C-K-L-E. I have no idea what it was supposed to be, but that was a story that a visitor here told me. I don't know how true it is, or whether it's the same people even.